Be yourself positive. Just another mindset.
Hello, friends, and welcome to a new episode of the Just Another Mindset podcast, the show that inspires you to change and live a more exciting life. My name is Ishmael, and each week I bring to you a relevant conversation, message, or topic that will not only entertain you, but help you to change towards a more meaningful and satisfying life, individually and collectively. Let us get inspired and embrace collective changes for the better.
In today's episode, I have the great opportunity to talk to Dominik, and we talk about how a daily structure helps him to start every day being a success. We evaluate on how following structure and feeling first benefits can help you to change. We also discuss how a clear life vision supports the plan or where you want to be in 3 to 5 years, and how frequently checking assumptions will help you to live a happier life. We talk a lot about changes and the fact that different changes need different paces, and it's always worth having a stable challenger network. We talk about the difference of trying, testing, and proving something, and we elaborate on why discipline gives you ultimate freedom, and why an activity that does not require you to be perfect helps you a lot after all. If something is important to you, like for example friendships, you may want to give it energy and take notes about it. And we discuss what white lies are, how to acknowledge them, and how to avoid them. There's a lot of facts about change that you are likely not to have heard before, and I hope that you can take away some of them from this episode. And with that, Dominik, a warm welcome to the Just Another Mindset podcast. I'm super excited to have you on board today, and welcome. And my first question is, how do you feel today and what's on your mind?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I wanted to say this in English because I very rarely speak in English on podcasts, and usually the guests in English-speaking podcasts, they say, thank you for having me. So thank you for having me, Isma. How am I feeling? I'm rested. I'm happy. I work today on things I like. I have a wonderful beginning of the day with my community, because I have a community, and once a month we have a meeting called Ask Me Anything. And I'm always looking forward to this meeting because the questions they ask make me think, make me ponder, make me think really quickly. And I like this exercise in the morning. So that was a nice start of the morning. Of course, walk with the dog. It's a really good day. So thank you for asking. But yeah,
It sounds like
we have a chance to talk. So
that's what. So we already have a beautiful component of our days. And that makes me wonder, is there something, Dominik, like typical day in your life, or is that something that you say you have this day for me? Is that something you do more regularly? You talked about a monthly cadence. Is there something like a weekly approach for, how do you structure your days? What do you do?
Yeah, I think that before I answer the question, it's important to give you a context, because of course my answer might be challenging for someone who has small kids, and hearing that someone has very structured day, time for rest, may be frustrating for someone who has different lifestyle. And I always try to add this asterisk with additional information. So I live by myself. I have 2 kids who come to me every week, almost every week, for a couple of days, and I live with my dog. So that's the setup. And I work mostly from home with some exceptions. So yes, I have a structure of the day, especially in the beginning and at the end. So I call it routines. These are kind of foundations of a good day for me. If I get up in the morning at the same time and I do the same things every day, I can be pretty sure that even if I'm sad or frustrated or it's a challenging day, this day won't be that bad, because I started the day in a good way. And then I have evening routine with a few things I do every day. If you are interested, I can tell you about the details because it's pretty important for me. Beside that, I work in most of the cases from Monday to Friday. I'm undergoing a change now. I used to work 4 days a week with customers and having 1 day for self-development, learning, and thinking. Now I'm changing it to 3 days with customers and 2 days for development, creating, writing, recording, and then during weekends it depends on the weekend. So I have more structure during the week than during the weekends.
That sounds wonderful, and indeed, we want to talk a little bit about change today, and changes not only in your weekly structure but also in life, because I know that you are a great expert. You have done many changes in your life for yourself. But before we talk about that, actually, it would be super interesting for me personally, and I guess also for our audiences, to understand how much time and what structures do you actually have in place in the morning and in the evening. So if you don't mind to share, I would be very interested indeed.
Yeah, and I'll talk about something that's present now, because I'm building this over time. I started working on this maybe 10 years ago. And of course, it's changing according to the changes in my life, what I learn, and what I need. So I get up almost every day at 5 a.m. And that's the time that suits me really well. And morning is really structured. I go to the toilet, I wake myself, then I go and then I'm taking cold shower. That's important for me. Cold shower is it has two purposes. One is a stoic challenge, stoic exercise. It's pretty hard in the morning when you leave a warm bed to go and take the cold shower, immediately turning the coldest water available. And I do this for 4 to 5 minutes. Then I meditate. After the meditation, I walk my dog. And then the second part of the morning depends if it's a day for me that I run or if it's a day without the training. So those three times a week, I'm running between half an hour and 1.5 hours, depending on the day. The other days I read. I'm reading a book, writing, and I end my morning routine every day, including weekends, because this routine I also have on Saturday and Sundays. I end my day by writing down the plan for the day, setting what are the most important priorities, what I want to achieve, what I don't want to achieve, what I want to remove from the day, checking my calendar, and so on. So that's the morning routine. And depending if it's a day with running or not, it lasts between 1.5 hours and 2.5 hours, more or less. That's why I'm getting in the morning, because it gives me enough time to finish my morning routine until the world is waking up, and I'm not dependent on anyone else. It's the only time of the day that I fully control. No one interrupts me during the time. And that's morning. In the evening, it's a little bit less time consuming. I do journaling. So I journal every day, writing down my thoughts, my main events, maybe ideas. Also, I give every day a mark between -2 and 2, -2, -1, 0, 1, or 2. That serves.
Okay, and you said that is obviously also something that's changing over time. So if there is a new component that you would like to implement, I guess you have a good structure in place, as in how to make a habit, how to create this habit, or how to get it into your routine. That's super interesting. And the few questions that came to mind, I mean, maybe first a remark, I think there's quite an overlap. For me, the thing that I most looked forward to coming back from Asia to Europe is cold water, because that's something you do not get over there. And I do like warmth and I do like the sun, but I also really do appreciate cold water, which currently right now being here in northern Spain, it's super beautiful because I can just jump into the ocean, which has like 13 degrees in the morning. So I don't even have to go for that shower, but that's wonderful. And when
I
you
envy
talk...
that.
One day we're gonna go together. Let's just make that plan. Go for runs and then for cold swims afterwards. I think that's a very, very good thing. And when you talk about taking notes and also reviewing those notes, it would be interesting for me to understand. I believe you do it digitally. That's what you said. And sometimes I have a little bit, because I do take a lot of notes in the books that I'm reading, in the podcasts that I'm listening to, and so forth. So just to clarify, you have each and every day you use half an hour more or less to go through your notes and to recap the full day. Because what I have in place right now is like once a week, I go through my full list of stuff, of quotes that I read or paragraphs that I read and podcasts that I listen to. But why is it important for you to do that on a daily basis, really? And what is the outcome of your evening routine? That would be very interesting for me.
Yeah, that changed when I read the book called How to Take Smart Notes, where the Zettelkasten method, which I believe is a German word, from the methodology created by Niklas Luhmann. I think that's the name of the guy. Why every day I changed what I highlight in books and what I take notes about.
Mm-hmm.
There is a habit or routine or kind of a rule even that everything I highlight in a book or I store copy from the podcast, I want to comment immediately. I'm not highlighting anything that I'm not able to give a few words of comment or a few sentences of comment. That means that first of all, I'm taking less notes, less highlights, because not everything is important enough for me to think why I'm commenting on that. And why I'm going through those notes every day, because at the end of the week, in most of the cases, I forgot the context, why that highlight was important for me. If I'm able to do that every day, I'm remembering why that moved me, why that resonated with me, what ideas were sparked from that particular highlight. And it's much easier to create original thoughts based on this highlight if I'm doing it every day, because I have this memory of the context. And then from the day, those literature notes, there are not many of them, 5, 6, 10. It's not many. But if I do this on a weekly basis, then I need to reserve like 2 hours of my time to do that for all the notes. And it's not that easy. And whenever I think about the task that lasts for 2 hours, I'm eager to procrastinate it because it's too long at the time. So I'm a big fan of, and it suits me, my character, my way of acting, working. I like to have smaller chunks of work because it's easier for me to sit and do it. Smaller meaning no longer than 40, 45 minutes. That's ideal for me.
And probably it's also faster to transfer, to process that information if you do it on a daily basis, really. No? So if you can have the structure to go through the day and say, okay, what was important, it probably also helps you tremendously the next morning if you go through your priorities and your high priority tasks, right?
And there's one more reason to do that, and that's connected with something that was called Zeigarnik effect. That's a psychological effect described by Bloom as Zeigarnik in the beginning of 20th century, that we remember better things that we haven't finished than those that we finished. So for me, it's a way to do the brain dump and not to think about that anymore. So I'm clearing my mind to sleep better, to have a better capacity for new ideas. So that's also the reason I'm doing this.
No, absolutely. It sounds like I'm gonna try that. I'm gonna test that, and I'm gonna let you know how it goes because I really like this approach of doing that. A daily activity, let's say 15, 20, 30 minutes, whatever, depending on how much information we consume. Because as you say, I sometimes do have a difficulty, especially during the weekend, if you want to take a day off or if you want to just disconnect. You have a lot of notes, you have a lot of content that you want to go through on the one hand, but on the other hand, you really don't. So I will let you know how that goes. I think that already is the first big gem I can take away from this episode personally. So thank you very much for that.
I'm looking forward for hearing what are the results, and I love that you changed try to test because trying speaks about there are no details. Test, it's a little bit more concrete approach.
Yeah, absolutely. So talking about trying and testing, Dominik, one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you about is because you are such a great expert, I would call it, on change. And you said that roughly 10 years ago, you started having systems, you started self-development, and you started, I can name a few more buzzwords, but maybe you want to tell us a little bit what happened 10 years ago, and were you the same person? What has changed since then?
10 years ago is a long time ago, isn't it? At the same time, it went so fast. Again, a word about, or a few words about the context. 10 years ago, I was still living with my family because I told you that I'm divorced. I'm having my kids. They don't live with me. They're coming here. So 10 years ago, I was still married. I lived in a small town nearby the town I'm living now. Because when we are talking now, I'm talking to you from Krakow, where I work and when I studied, and I spent almost 20 years here around. So 10 years ago, I lived in a small town. I was commuting to Krakow every day. My kids were pretty small, 5 and 2, or 6 and 2 and 3. And I was pretty busy because it took me almost 3 hours in total every day to commute. On top of this, I was taking care of my family, and there was some background story of what I was supposed to do. And I had really little time for myself, and I was pretty overweight. I'm 180, and my weight was like 107 kilograms at the time because of eating badly, not being active, and so on. And that was the time I wanted to change that. So it changed with the change started with me trying to be a little bit more active and more healthy because I felt really overwhelmed, and I lack also time for myself because I was either at work or in commute or taking care of kids or dealing with whatever life threw at me, and I didn't have time for myself. I wanted to have at least a few days in a week for myself. So I found a simple plan how to start running. I wasn't able to run for 500 meters. I found a plan that it promised that during 10 weeks, I can go from 0 meters to running for 30 minutes, not very fast, but running. What I like, it was very concrete plan. So I followed that plan for 10 weeks. And the funny thing is that in the small city 10 years ago in Poland, not very many people run. So I was laughed at, the strange person running in the evening, because I was trying to do that. I was doing this in the evenings or overnight. But what was important in this process, that after 10 weeks, I was able to run for 30 minutes. My body started to change, and my thinking was much more clear. You know that effect that if you're moving, your brain works better. So I was amazed with how simple plan followed very carefully, how big effect it can have on myself. That taught me that, okay, if there is a plan and if there is a routine and I follow it, I can have results. So I start thinking, how can I apply that in different parts of my life? So I start thinking about, are there any routines I can follow at my work? Because I started to it was already a time that I was moving from being a programmer to be more like a technical leader or a team leader. It was a small progress. I can tell you later in a minute why that change happened, because it's also important in my life. So I thought, okay, how can I apply what I learned from running at my work? So I started looking for resources, books, knowledge, whatever that was speaking about that, and that's how I stumbled upon a book called GTD, Getting Things Done, classical book in that sphere. It was boring as hell. I didn't like that book at all. So I tried to find a different way of learning from the book, and purely by chance, one of the conference I was attending as a programmer had a track for self-organizing, and then I met a guy who was talking how you can apply GTD in OneNote. Very concrete prescription how you can create notebooks, notes, and so on. I participated in that conference, and it turned out that this guy is a coach, and you can hire him to teach you that, because my company was giving us training budget. I used the training budget to hire that guy, and he was my first business coach. We are friends till today, and he showed me how I can structure my day, how I can structure my notes, my work. But also what was really important, it was the first time he asked me a question: what are your values and what are important contexts of your life? And I was 31 at the time, and I never asked that question myself before that. What are my values, life values, and what are my contexts? So it was like the first grain of my growth. I started using his methods, what he proposed me, and within a few months, maybe a dozen months, I was perceived at the company I work with as the one of more productive person. I applied those things from the book almost to the letter, and suddenly it turned out that I wasn't late. I was able to do more. I was treated as an expert in planning my work, planning my meetings, and so on. And people start coming to me, asking for advice, and sharing that knowledge. So that was 10 years ago, and that's when all other things started. Because of course, when you see progress motivates you. You want to have that more. I started reading more, applying this knowledge more, testing it in real life, attending more conferences, buying courses. And over time, my work changed from technical leader, being close to the projects, to being a big team manager and having more responsibility on the company level, being also responsible partially for budgeting and so on. And those two changes were like parallel. I was having more responsibilities, and I was better and better in self-organizing and being very, very good in saying, this is my priority. This is the most important. I'm not working on these things. And that lasted for like 5 next years. I learned a lot. I reached top position I could within the area I was responsible in the company. And then reorganization happened in the company. So the two teams merged, and suddenly I was to choose what am I to do in that company, and is there anything else I can do here. I'm a person that loves to learn, and there was a time I was starting to think, okay, maybe the next step is outside of that company. But that's the second change, and we can talk about that in a minute. But it all started with me trying to find a way to be more active, seeing that a structure and routines help to do that, to reach my smaller goals, and I was applying that in next areas. So that's the backstory how it started 10 years ago.
No, absolutely. And for everybody who's not watching on YouTube, I can say that Dominik certainly is fit now. So it did work, that change. Physical health certainly is there. Mental health, I would state also. So I think there is a big chain that started going 10 years ago, and you developed a lot from there. You talked about very concrete or very precise steps and approaches that you followed. Is that something that was good in the very beginning, to really have a very clear plan for the next 10 weeks? You're going to do A, B, C in particular days? Or is that something that really suits your personality up until today? So how much flexibility and how much precise approaches do you use today, or have you used in further changes then?
I was more precise with planning and setting very concrete goals back then than I'm now. Or to be more precise, I'm having now additional step that helps me to plan my goals. Because back then I only had goals and I was reaching the goals. After reaching the goal, I was planning the next goal. Now it's a little bit more. I want to use the word structured, but I think that it's more ingrained in my life vision, because back then I knew what I want to have in half of the year, maybe next year. Now I'm having my life vision and life vision, so I know what I want to work toward in my life. I'm 42 now. I have no idea how long will I live, but my life vision, I want to work on it regardless if it's 10 days or 10 years or 50 years, because it's the same. And when I have my life vision, I want to connect my daily tasks, my daily activities with this life vision. And that wasn't present in 10 years ago. Life vision and life mission, I created over time. While I was reading new books, I was immersed in what other people were showing, why life vision and life mission is important. So now I have daily tasks, I have life vision and life mission, and in between I have something that I called aspirations, and then I have goals. Aspirations, I'm looking, I have one more thing, I have that's very important for me, I have life contexts. So I created my life vision and life mission. I listed all the contexts that are important in my life, like kids, career, self-development, health, financial health, partnerships, partners, a few more. There are like seven of them. For each of these contexts, I listed my aspirations. It means what would I like to say that happens in this context in 3 to 5 years in the future. So if you ask me about my aspiration in, for example, health area, I'd answer you that I want to be able to run in the mountains for like 30, 40 kilometers. I don't want to race. I want to be able to go there and just start moving. So that's my aspiration for that time. I'm not able to do it now. That's my aspiration. If you ask me about my career, I would tell you that in 3 to 5 years, I will be able to work no more than 20 hours a week. I can work more, but 20 hours is maximum I need to work to serve all the purposes or the needs I have in my life. And I would love to earn 80% of my money from online work and only 20% from stationary work. So I'm not there, but that's where I want to be in those 3 to 5 years. It's very concrete, but I don't have all the ideas yet how to do that. And then every quarter, every 12 weeks, more or less, I'm sitting down and I'm thinking, okay, what goals I want to work that will help me to fulfill my aspirations, that will help me to fulfill my life vision and life mission. It may feel very complicated, but that structure makes it very easy to focus on what's the most important. It's very easy to, when I'm looking for on a new idea or a new challenge or a new cooperation, it's very easy for me to answer, is it in congruity with what's the most important for me? Or maybe it isn't, and to decide if I want to embark on that journey or not. So that's the biggest change that happened between 10 years ago and now. I have the structure that I I'm very careful to maintain. I'm looking through this every weekly review. I'm reserving myself 2 or 3 days for that at the end of every year. And every month I'm having a day for reflection where I'm thinking about that, trying to make sure that that's revised, that's up to date, that I'm able to notice false assumptions, that I'm able to rethink some things. So that's the whole process there.
No, it's a wonderful process, and thank you also for making that very explicit and tangible. And again, I think we have quite a bit of overlap there. If you say every month you have a day for reflection, I for myself say each quarter at least I want to have a reflection weekend, which is something I have been practicing for the past 5 years, really rigorously. And yeah, to really follow the structure and to revisit and rethink also what you just what you created like 3 months ago or 6 months ago or a year ago, right? And also thank you for clarifying the time frame. I think this life vision, 3 to 5 years, we were saying earlier 10 years is a lot of time. It is, and 3 to 5 years looking forward is also a long time. So it would be fairly difficult, at least for myself, to say, okay, in 5 years to set a proper goal for that. Okay, in 5 years this and that. But once you set the life vision and a mission according to your values, I believe, it makes it easier to distinguish, okay, this suits my life vision and this is where I'm driving and therefore I need this particular part, or you do not.
May I comment one thing, because you touch one important thing that I learned within the last 2 years that helped to tune that process. And this rethinking and changing your assumptions, it's extremely important for me, because I have my character and my attitude is that sometimes if I choose something, it's very hard for me to say that I'm letting it go, that I'm stopping working on this. Because of course, because of the many reasons, mostly all the messages I received when a child, that if you choose something, you need to stick to it, because otherwise you are called names. And I learned this mostly thanks to Adam Grant and Think Again book. That started a change for me. I start doing almost to the letter what he proposes there. I have my challenge network. I'm having my, for almost every decision, I'm writing down in the decision log what were my assumptions, and I'm checking these assumptions after some time if they are still true. And that's helping me to be more better for myself, because I'm not sticking to something because I decided on that. I'm sticking to something because I know that it's still valid. That's important. That whole process is very important part.
No, absolutely. I fully agree. It's a very good book. There's a lot of wisdom, a lot of value in reading it. Obviously, we're going to link it in the podcast episode speaker notes. And as you say, I think over time we learn, we develop, right? And change is a component that is part of most of our lives. And sometimes it's also, or oftentimes, it's very worthy to change your assumptions or to re-challenge your assumptions, right? So you go, you experiment, you test, and then you figure out, what I thought a year ago about this and that, or about myself, or about an activity, might not be what it is today anymore. I mean, I'm also like looking back at routines, what we talked about earlier. There's things that suit me very well for a particular period of time, and then after some time, I can also make the decision to exchange it by another, or to use this time in a different way, right? I mean, if we talk about, okay, now I have this weekly reflection, if you want to call it, I'm more than happy to challenge that and to look into how does a daily routine suit me, right? And I think it's very beautiful to rethink your assumptions, even though it was you are the one who was writing it down. I think it's really helpful to have this ability to rethink. So thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah. We can add this thread with a beautiful quotation from Alan Alda. I don't remember the exact words, but he mentioned something that assumptions are like windows. It's worth to wash them from time to time, because after some time the light stops breaking through. So that's why you need to polish and wash your assumptions to make sure that the light and the reality is coming.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. That's a beautiful phrase, and we're gonna check that and also link that. Talking about changes, Dominic, how fast or how slow do you approach changes? So if you see that something should be or could be changed, based on your values, based on your reflection, based on your reflection work, how fast do you like or do you tend to implement changes? Probably there's not a one size fits all answer here, but what is your approach on change and in what speed do you do it?
That's you're very, very correct that it depends on a few things. And the biggest variable here is security of my sons. Uh, Understood as security that they have resources, food, and they are safe enough. I'm perfectly aware that there is no such thing as full security. We are living in permanently changing world, and I cannot secure them. But the basic security, being able to support them, is the most important thing for me. So if the change in any way is risking that my ability to support them, then I'm slowing down and I'm doing it much, much slower in a much more cautious way. And I tell you what are my tools for that. But if the change is in an area that doesn't impact security of my sons in the way I understand it, I'm doing it much faster, but also using very concrete tools. So let's start with the first one, the bigger change that I try to approach slowly. For example, in 2015, I became a certified Gallup coach. All the changes in the company started to be very visible. I was to find my new role. I wasn't sure what to do. And because I became one of the first Gallup certified coaches in Poland, many companies start approaching me because I was one of the few people available there. So it was visible that I'm working in a company, IT industry, very safe industry, very well paid in Poland. I think that's all over the world, it's true. And then I've seen that there is an opportunity because companies are approaching and I can do what I really like. Because I was good with coding, being good programmer, but I've seen amazing colleagues who were many levels above me in the abilities of coding, coming up with abstract ideas, were out of the league. I was out for me, but I was really good in helping people do what they do the best, forming teams, making sure that everyone has whatever they want. So I've seen that I'm good at it. And these companies that were approaching me, I've seen, okay, I can do the trainings, I can do workshops, run workshops for them and help them in that way. But security of IT, less security of being a freelancer, or less stability. So what I was asking my question, okay, I want to go in the direction, but what I need to happen to make it as safe as possible to not ruin the security of my kids. So in these cases, I'm using something I learned from Stoics, and which is very operationalized by Tim Ferriss. There is this famous tech talk called fear setting exercise, which basically is all about asking a challenging question and then listing all the fears you are having in context of that question. For each fear, you are giving an answer. What can you do to prevent that fear to be fulfilled? And what you can do to fix if that fear is materialized? Basically, we are creating plan A and plan B to approach that change. So I ask myself a question: what would happen if I leave my day job and become a freelancer in that area? And I listed like 10 areas that I'm afraid of. And one by one, I was listening, okay, what can I do to make sure that it won't happen, or make as sure as possible that it won't happen? And based on this, I created a list of things that I need to do. They need to be reality. And it turned out that it started as a plan that I estimated for like between 2 and 3 years long. So there was a change. I know that I'm embarking on the road to that change, and I know what I needed to do. It was on one side building a safety net, on the other was finding the best possible health security options for myself, then making sure that I won't work more than 40 hours, then on the day job, in my freelance job, then making sure that I have time for vacation and time with my families and so on. So all these areas, I had some ideas how to address this. And I started the process. And after 2.5 years, in mid 2017, I decided that it's time. All of the things, all the checkboxes were checked, and it was time for me to make the switch. And I switched. So it's an example of changing in a secure way, making sure that I'm not destabilizing what's really, really important for my in my life. And I used that approach in a few other areas in my life, and it works really nice, but only in a big areas, because it's time consuming, it's very secure, it's not very, very fast, but it gives the results over time. And now, if I want to change something quickly in other areas that I don't need that much security, I'm using a methodology that I learned from the book called The Lean Startup, Eric Johansson. I don't know the name of the guy. I'm terrible with the names. And the methodology is called build, measure, learn. Build, measure, learn, meaning you describe your current reality, you describe what you want to build, you describe how you'll measure, how you will measure if it's already built. You describe what this change, what you're building, is about. For example, using the Moscow board, which consists of four parts: what must happen, what should happen, what could happen, and what's not included, what won't happen in that change. So it gives you very concrete areas of the change. And there is also a part for learning. And I designed this as a process. I designed this as a process that is iterative. For example, I describe first change for 2 months. After 2 months, I'm revisiting if the measurement points are met. If not, I'm doing the second iteration, third iteration, and so on. So you can totally call it a change with a self-testing period included, because every 2 months or 3 months, I can test if this change is good for me. And I'm using this, for example, now when I'm changing between working 4 days with customers to 3 days with customers. I describe what I want to build, what is the reality, what are the measurement points, what must be included in this, what should, could, and won't. I did the same when I was deciding that I won't work with individual customers, only with corporate customers. The same happened when I was building an online course. The same thing happened. What's the smallest version of the online course? How can I test it? How can I spend some time on it? The same was when I was thinking about changing the apartment I live in. And based on those tests, I decided not to do that, because it turned out after 2 months that the test points failed, and I knew that it's not the way I want to move forward. And recently, I added one more point to that procedure, and it's because I read this book I told you about, Thinking Again. In the beginning, before I start working on it, I run it through the challenge network. So I have a few trusted people. I show this to them and I tell them, I need you to criticize it. I don't need you telling me what's good in it. I need you to point what are the failing points, what are the false assumptions there. And based on that feedback from them, I'm doing a second step. I'm rewriting the assumptions, the measurement points based on what they tell me, and that works beautifully.
It certainly does sound like you have a lot of measurements and you have a lot of data points and you have a lot of feedback also incorporated into that process. And how do you deal with, let's say, your apartment as the example, that after 2 months you find out you should not change, or your test actually figured out that you do not want to develop in a certain area? Does that still make you sad or hold you back sometimes? Or are you with your mindset in a way that you say, okay, in 8 weeks, I'm going to question myself again. And if it's a no, it's a fully no. Does that work that smooth, or do you have sometimes still challenges with that?
I have challenges if I want to do the homework before the change. The less time I spend in the beginning, the harder the most challenging is for me to say no to it and agree not moving forward with the plan. But if the assumptions and the measurement points are well described and well thought through, this change the decision not to move forward with it. It's pretty easy and pretty straightforward, and that's what also motivates me to spend enough time in the beginning on that process, because I've noticed that it makes the next steps easier.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. No, because my question would be, how do you avoid proving something to be right or proving to be something that you want, right? Because there's a thin line for me by saying testing stuff or proving something right or wrong. I don't know if you have a few thoughts on that.
I do, and I'm guilty of that. Confirmation bias and those kind of biases are visible, and I'm doing whatever I can to avoid them. At the moment, I'm writing even an ebook about that, about the mental models I'm using. So I have a few mental models that help me to avoid those confirmation biases and those kind of thinking. So first of all, quite often I'm using something called inversion. Inversion is the way of thinking about the failure first. So I have an idea, I want what I want to achieve, and I'm thinking, okay, what will be the best outcome of the situation? And that helps me to limit the bad paths, bad outcomes. And quite often it also helps me to see the confirmation bias. So for example, one of the points in this inversion exercise will be, what will happen if I if I fall into confirmation bias and I see only ideas that confirm, or facts that confirm my base assumption? And then the answer is very, very clear. Probably you'll end in this bad place, or with not the best solution. I'm doing a lot of things, Isma, to learn from my past. I think that's one of the biggest things I learned over the last 10, 11, 12 years, self-reflection and reasoning from my own experiences. And that's why I'm writing journal every day with those marks, which helps me to list all the best days or the best days. That's why I'm doing kind of retrospectives of all the failures and all the successes. That was important. That was a big change for me. When I start also thinking what made this project successful, and it was surprising for me how often it was just a pure coincidence, because the same project, if this didn't happen and I didn't have control over it, went differently, it would be not a success but a failure. So I'm thinking, okay, how can I secure myself? How can I make sure that this coincidence point is not a deal breaker for that project? So I'm spending a lot of time on that part of my life, and I always call it an investment. The same goes with weekly review. So often people tell me, how do you justify spending 1.5 hour weekly on thinking about your week? And I'm saying, okay, in a week you have 168 hours. That's my investment in the other 167 hours. 1 hour to make sure that the other 167 are the best possible hours for me.
No, absolutely. And it sounds like, I mean, for me, it's one of the best investments. If you say, even let's make it 2 hours a week, I mean, there's quite a few other hours your week that benefit from that. When we talk about it, I mean, it sounds like there's clearly a lot of structure, there is a lot of data collection, there's a lot of measurement, and you approach changes in a well thought through manner, I would like to call it. It's not necessarily fast or slow, but you do have processes to test all that. Is there areas in your life that you break your own rules because you just really like, I don't know, ice skating, or because you really like particular areas where you're like, okay, I don't need to test, I really want to do something? I would be interested. Where do you break your own rules?
If
If that's an excellent question. I'm not sure if what I tell you is in that area, but we can talk about this. So there are two areas that I think are outside of that thinking scope. So I have a very big need to think my answers through. So sometimes I'm thinking slowly, and it's a digression. But sometimes I say, "Do you want my intuitive answer or well thought through answer?" Intuitive I can give you now. The well thought through in 2 days. But I do my best. I do my best now. So I'm a huge believer in the saying that discipline gives you ultimate freedom. Why I'm saying this? Because of all the structure, and the structure is not challenging for me because I build the structure based on habits, and habits are kind of automatic. If you build them well, you don't have to think about them that much. So most of the things I told you are on a habit level, habitual for me. And thanks to this, in most of the cases during the week, many weekends, I finish whatever I have to do, or I decided I want to do around 4 p.m. And beside this half an hour in the evening with my evening routine, I don't have that. I don't have the time. I don't have plans for the time, and that's time for me to be spontaneous. I can do whatever I want. So that's one thing. Planning ahead and having this structure also allows me to find time to go for 1 week somewhere else and not work during the time. Like when we talk about this podcast, I was in Germany with my friends, and maybe I work for a couple of hours during the time, and I spent a lot of time with my friends there. In 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I'm going with my other friends for 5 days, and I won't work there. After this next trip, in next 3 weeks, I'm going for 10 days with my sons, somewhere in Europe, to Croatia, also without need to plan. And it wouldn't be possible for me if I didn't have a structure. So having a structure allows me to have predictable time to be spontaneous, to do whatever I want. So that's one answer. I'm not sure if it fits the description of the structure, because this freedom is in structure of everything I do. I know that, I hear that, but that suits my character. Also, most of the weekends, I don't have plans for weekends. I do whatever I want with people or with myself. I'm introvert. I like to spend time by myself. That suits me really well. So that's one area. And the other area that's kind of new or rediscovered way of acting. I'm trying to find activities that I don't need to do anything. What I mean by that, there are no goals or needs of productive approach to that, optimizing that. Like, for example, photography. I love to go outside with my camera, observe the world, take some pictures. If I take some pictures, I'm happy. If I want to take pictures, it's still a great time for me. And I don't need to make it my income source. I don't need to be the best in it. I don't need to win any prizes. I don't even need to make sure that I'm getting better in it, because the time itself and the activity of being outside and walking, looking, is that important for me. And somehow I'm breaking my rules there, because it's not connected directly with any of my aspirations. It's not connected with any of my points in my life vision goals. It's just time that gives me opportunity to be immersed in the time, in the moment, without thinking why I'm doing this, what is the point of it, what is the ultimate goal. So these two areas, I think, will be my answer. But I'll give you also the third area. I'm not sure what is your spiritual view. What do you believe or not believe? And people are different; they have different beliefs. I believe that life itself has no goal, and we are to choose that goal. And for me, being able to check, to being, I call it being on the road, like being in the movement. That's what gives me pleasure. And everything I describe to you is not oppressive. It's not a structure I have to do, and I feel tired. That makes me be more in tune in what's important in my life. I'm able to test more. I'm able to be more with my friends. I'm able to be more intentional in whatever I do. thanks to this structure. So this structure helps what I believe is important in life. No inherent goal, not the goal that is given from anywhere. I'm choosing to experiment, to choose, to find, to test, to seek better relationships, and everything I told you about helps me do that more. So yeah, so that was it.
Absolutely, and I believe, as I understand you, that the first one and the third one are somewhat connected, right? So let's say throughout the week, or for N% of the week or of the month, you are very structured and you can basically follow your habits. And you do that also to have this spontaneous lifestyle, or to have the ability to, on a Thursday, do this and that, or on a Sunday really not to care about anything, and or have those 2-3 hours of morning and evening routines. But it really creates the foundation for you to have this spontaneous decision-making process. If something comes your way that you would like to test and try out, because that may eventually help you in your third layer that you just described, to find a spiritual meaning, or to answer the question as in what is important to life.
One more thing. Sorry. As I told you, I'm thinking slowly, but I try to give the whole answer. It's also immersed in what I took responsibility for. When my kids are born, there are very few choices in life that you cannot redo, change them. And one of those choices is a choice of having kids. It doesn't matter if you take care of them or not. You're a father or a mother. It's nothing that you can change. And me having kids, it influences the basic. I want to say that in a concrete way. There is a foundation. There is a framework. I'm able to move within because I'm a father. I'm a father, so I want to be close to my kids. That means that I live in Krakow because I can be in 40 minutes in the place when they live. If I weren't a father, probably my life choices, my life goals will be a little bit different, because the base layer will be different. I would be able to travel the world. Probably I would live in Norway because I love Norway, but I'm choosing not to do that because I want to be a good father as I can to my children. And that's important. The context I mentioned in the beginning. Person that has small kids have different possibilities. People that don't have kids, they have different possibilities. So whatever I'm telling about, that I want to work that many hours, it's based on me wanting to support my kids and be close to my kids and be a good father. So that's important. And I think it's like a layer 0 at the base of everything that I told you about.
No, absolutely. And that makes very good sense, right? I mean, certain decisions, or certain non-decisions, but certain effects on your life create this foundation, and it just changes. No, it could be parents, it could be children, and there is, as you say, in fact, very few things that you cannot change, but this certainly is one, and it creates your foundation. So thanks for this clarification. I was very interested because you started a thought process in my mind when you talked about photography, that this is really something that you don't have to be the best, and that you don't have to grow, that you don't have particular goals, that you would just enjoy doing. How do you find such an activity, or what is an approach that you could recommend to people? How do they find such a thing? Because, I mean, truth be told, for myself, I like to do sports myself. I also go for runs. That's something we share. I do love doing sports outside. And oftentimes it does work that I'm like, okay, it doesn't really matter if you do a repetition more, or if you surf a wave more, or if you run a kilometer more. But in sports, oftentimes you want to develop, you want to go get a little bit better. But how do you find an activity? Because I think it's a beautiful thing to have such an activity that you can just fully enjoy without any pressure internally or externally. Is there something that you can share with the audience? How do you test to find such a soul activity, I want to call it?
I would be so happy to give very concrete answer. And this is the process you can follow, these 5 steps, and at the end of month you'll find your activity. But to be honest, I don't have such answer. In case of photography, it just happened. I was surrounded with the right people. They were doing it, and they were smart enough not to be very what's the word, egalitarian about that, because they were really good in photography, and they allowed me, amateur novice, to try stuff with them. I was like many levels below them when it comes to the skill set, but they showed me what's good, what's great with that activity, and that was amazing for me, because that allowed me to test it and find my way in a safe way. So maybe the first thing is to immerse yourself or surround you with the people that have their way of thinking and that will allow you to test whatever you do. And I think that's one area, one way. I'm a huge believer in structuring your relationships, choosing wisely who do you surround you with, because that has so huge impact of you as a person. I can see that whenever I can name people around me and I can learn how I changed because of these people around me. And I try to structure this in an intentional way, sometimes saying that this relationship is not anymore a good relationship. So that's the first part. Find people, find groups who are doing something, and that will allow you to test with them. And if you feel that that's something good for you, then just move forward. Because when I got this idea that it's something that I might be interested in, I start reading some books, having some ideas how to move, how to do more of it. So that's one area. But I have also another example with running, because it started for me as not such activity, because I had a plan. I want to run as fast as possible, finish marathons. I finished a few of them. Then I wanted to finish the next one faster, and so on. So it was goal driven. I want to achieve something. But at some point, I was so tired that when I was waking in the morning and there was an item in my day plan, do the training X with a speed of Y for that amount of time, I was so fed up even thinking about that I thought, okay, maybe that's not a good way of approaching something that I started as a healthy habit. So I thought, okay, what can I do? I did some tests. I started leaving my home without any watch, any plan. I was leaving and I was saying, okay, today I'll go in that direction and I run until I want, and then I come back. And that saved running for me. And now my only goal is to move often enough. But how long I run, how many kilometers I run, whatever I do, it's irrelevant, and it's changing into similar activity as photography. Not running for the purpose of something; it's running for the sake of doing. And I'm not sure what you like in running, but there is this moment after a couple of kilometers when I'm turning off any music podcast, because I start to listen to my steps, and the sound of steps is so meditative that I forget about the whole world, and I'm immersed fully in that activity. And that's so nice, so pleasurable moment that I want to do that more, because I'm there. I don't need to run faster, slower, do repetition, do intervals. I'm just there. And sometimes there is a cherry on the top, like this Saturday when it's raining, and I love to run in the rain. And there were puddle of waters. I could run through the puddles of water, and it was, I'm smiling even thinking about that. So running, which started as my way to lose weight, then I had plans and goals to reach. I noticed that it's becoming a burden for me and something that I don't like. And I changed how I did it. And now it's slowly moving to the direction similar to photography. But that requires self-reflection and catching that moment. Why I'm sad today? Why I'm frustrated? I'm doing something that I don't want to do, and I'm doing this because there is a plan that is more important than what is good for me. And that's when it changed.
No, absolutely. But I really love those examples. And it also shows me and hopefully everybody else that you can, with similar or even the same activities, just tweak around a little bit, right? So you're not doing that because you have to beat this particular time over this particular kilometers and so forth. But if you just leave your phone at home, if you don't check how fast, how long you're going, but you go the distance that feels right for you today, and no matter who cares if it's like 500 meters or 25 kilometers, I think that can do a lot. And I think this plays in with the example that you gave. I think you said, okay, surround yourself with the right people and then experiment and test. I think one factor before that, which is very well given for you and probably also for me, and this is an open exchange, is to make time for that. To accept that there is activities that may enrich your life, if this is something that you're looking into, and say, okay, once a week or every day, whatever the cadence may be, that you try something. And then you also accept that you try, and you trial and error, right? So after a week, you maybe figure out that this is not for you, or after a month, or after half a year, this is this rethinking component. So I think, as you said, there is no one fits all approach at all for finding this activity, but it is really understanding that it has a value for yourself. So make time for it, and then surround yourself with people and surround yourself with inspiring individuals. So if you say that you structure the relationships that you have, I don't know if you want to comment on that, but how do you also, how do you do that? Is that something that you also put into your reflection? Is that every quarter? Is that every year? Do you have names written down of people? Is that like, I mean, if you want to talk about it, I would be very interested.
I'm always cautious, very often cautious to talk about this because people look at me strangely. Because I have kind of a CRM for my friends. CRM like usually is used for customers. So I have a system to take notes about my friends. And the purpose is that friendships are very important in my life. And if something is important, I want to give my attention to that and my energy. And my attention energy is in the form of notes and structure where I can write down what's important for these people. And I want to remember about important dates, important events, important people in those people's lives. And I organize every week enough time to be in touch with these people, either call, text, send messages, record messages on WhatsApp, whatever. So that's like a basic structure. I don't have many such people, maybe 7, 8 people in the list, in 2 tiers, very, very close friends and close friends. So there are 3 people in the section, very, very close friends, the others in the close friends list. And I make sure that every week I have enough time to talk with them, with them, and or do something for them. And of course, sometimes someone sometimes can say that they don't have time for that. I'm aware that it's not that I don't have time; it's giving priorities and alternative cost. Alternative cost of not doing this is losing those friendships, making these people less important for me. So that's one part of equation. And the other one is journaling, because in journal I am writing down important events from my day. And if there are people in my life that I constantly feel worse after meeting them, not after one occurrence, because of course every person can have a worse day, but after a dozen meetings, after such meetings, I'm writing down, I'm feeling down, I'm so frustrated, I'm so sad. That's a strong indicator that something's wrong with this relationship, that something's not working. And of course, I'll try is a wrong word here, because usually I plan how can I talk to the person, explain what's happening, and if we cannot fix this, I'm removing from the relationship. Not saying that I don't want to know you in real life, but I limit number of meetings. It's less intense. But that's true observation and making sure that I have enough data points in my journal with information. Okay, there were 5 meetings in last half of the year. After each of them, I felt worse than before the meeting. What's happening? Why it's happening? And then if I don't have good ideas how to fix that.
And searching open communication then as well. And yes, people may or may not look funny if they hear that, but again, there is quite a big similarity, because I have the very same. And when you just said 7 people are in your inner circle somewhat, I have 7 people in my inner circle currently. It's not about the number, but it's about understanding who of your people are you spending time with, and is it the people that you want to spend time with? Because in the end, I believe we all have limited time. Nobody has time, but we can all take time. So if I choose the time once a week to call Dominik for 1 hour, it's the time I choose. And yes, I will not use this hour for something else, but it's my decision. So I also keep track of that. And then also to really approach people, because as you said, not everybody has a bad day, and everybody can have also a bad month or a very difficult phase. And sometimes it's important to stick, or oftentimes it's important to stick to support your friends here, but also to find this open communication and say, do you know what, Dominik, over the past 2 years, every second month we called and we didn't really create value, at least for myself. What do you think should we do with it? I mean, it's not that you start disliking someone, it's just that you accept that life is moving on, right? And people develop in different areas, and sometimes those accepting points are not as easy. I mean, I have that. I mean, I left Germany after high school and I never really came back, and I have good friends also who are developing into very different lives, and I'm super happy for them, and they are developing there, and it's exactly the right life they should develop towards. But sometimes it's also difficult for me to understand, to accept that and say, okay, Dominik has over the past 10 years developed so much and developed into a person that we really don't have as much common ground anymore. But I met, Peter, and with him I have so much common ground over the past 2 years, and this is why Dominik is moving out and he has a good life, happy, and this new person is coming into my life. So I really appreciate your open answer here, and it's not to discredit anyone from your friends, right? As long as you make it on open communication. If you just start ghosting people, I think it's a different story, right? But you should give people the chance to comment on stuff, and you should discuss it, because this is, after all, what friendship is about.
Exactly, I fully agree, and I'm happy that I met someone who has a similar way of thinking. It's not very common. It's so I'm really happy that there is another of that breed. I want to comment about one thing here: this open communication and the cost. Cost not being the bad word here. It's being reality, because if you spend 1 hour with one person, it's never only the matter of that 1 hour, the time. It's what you want to do during that 1 hour. And I want to be aware of that everything has alternative costs. The fact that I'm recording this conversation with you, it has alternative costs. Not only 1.5 hours of my time, what I'm not able to do during the time. I don't know, rest, walk the dog, and so on. And I can wait it. And it's not artificial, it's intentional. I want to be intentional with my time, coming back to my vision, my spirituality, what I believe in the world, and so on and so on. So that's one part. And the other one is this open communication. It's sometimes tough, because we avoid short-term challenges, and the cost is the long-term bad relationship. And we should do it differently. We should tolerate and do something hard now. Hard choice now, better life, easier life later on. And I'm listening for the 3rd time now, a book, the small book by Sam Harris, one of my favorite authors. It's called The Line, and it's only 1.5 hours in the audio form. And he says there that the argument there is that, of course, lying is bad, but also white lies are bad. And sometimes when we change relationship, we're saying, you know what, I don't have time. My kids are growing. I'm spending more time. And that's a bad communication. It's not an open communication. It's not true. it's much better to talk directly with the person saying, you know what, we are not, we changed. You are, I'm interested in this. From what you are telling me, you are interested in this. There are less and less common topics to talk about. Why are we meeting every second month? Is it only to drink beer? Because that's not the reason I want to. It's not why I want to spend time with you. And that's much better way of communicating, because I can say honestly what I'm thinking. The other person can understand why I'm changing it, and we can move forward in a better way. If I lie, even with these white lies, then I need to maintain that lie, and that's very costly on an emotional level, on an energy level, and that's very tricky. This because it's easy to say, to be open in communication, but it's much harder to do, because we need to meet with maybe challenging, tough, not pleasant reaction of the other person, and that's something that's worth learning. Yeah.
Absolutely, I fully agree. I'm going to take this book into my weekend. We're on a Thursday recording this, and I'm going to take this book. And one thing that just came to mind, again, it's an open exchange here, but it's like I'm somewhat dependent on WhatsApp and all those digital communication tools. And what I'm trying, I'm far from being perfect from it, but what I'm trying to, sometimes people give me fairly long updates on their life because we don't manage to call each other, and that's beautiful and that's wonderful. But sometimes I still have the tendency, or I had the tendency, to give you a short reply and say, Dominik, I'm going to get back to you in more detail sometime soon. And that's something I really try to avoid, because either right now is the time that I give you my update in detail, or we try to call each other again and then we meet each other. But I don't want to create this obligation by saying, okay, let's now give you a short, brief summary and later I will give you some more detail. But I'm using this open communication, like, okay, like let's try to call each other, and if we catch each other, super cool. But if it takes another 2-3 weeks, it may take another 2-3 weeks. But I also do see different responses, if you want to say, or people take it differently, depending on how you communicate with it. So it's very important and interesting here, indeed.
I have similar experiences, and don't understand me wrongly, I'm guilty of white lies. It's very hard to get rid of white lies, and I'm working on that right now. I have my own system of building such what's the word, skills of not giving white lies. So I'm in the process now of noticing when I give white lies, and I'm thinking, okay, why have I said it like this? Why I wasn't very direct in this? What it's saying about myself? What emotions am I avoiding? What situation I'm avoiding? And that's the part that's important on the way to be very good in avoiding white lies. But I agree, people are reacting very different ways, and that's the part of that being challenging, being using that way of communication. So, but I'm willing to experiment with this and do that more with new people. So we'll see.
Wonderful, beautiful. And I'm very curious to hear from you, unless you want to share something already, as how you avoid those white lies, or what your structure really is. And that maybe brings me to a question, because we talked a lot. We talked a lot about changes. We talked a lot about structure. Dominik, is there something that comes to mind that we haven't talked about today that you would really like to share with our audiences? I'm sure there is a lot of topics that we can have session 2, 3, and 17 about, and I'm more than sure that I will invite you again to the Just Another Mindset podcast. But is there something that comes to mind that you would like to, give to each and everybody today?
I think that's a kind of testimonial to what's happening at the moment, and how all the tools we talk about may be used in real life. And I'm on one side very curious to observe myself, and on the other I'm laughing at myself. I tell you, and you can decide if you use this in the project, in the podcast or not. 3 years ago, I split with my partner, and that I was with after getting divorced, and it was challenging. It was challenging, and one of the reasons was that I didn't have enough time for my kids when I was being that relationship. And after splitting, I decided, I remember this vividly. I decided, okay, if I want to be a good father, I cannot be with anyone. I need to be by myself, because otherwise I won't be able to spend enough time with my kids. And it's 2019, so it's 2022. And recently, by accident, I started reading a lot of books about love, relationships, and so on. And I caught myself thinking, I'm myself because I need to have enough time for my kids. And I realized, okay, it was decision taken in very concrete environment with very concrete point in time. I was sad after splitting with the partner. I was tired because I always had to choose. I was choosing. I thought that I had to, but it was my choice to spend time with her or with my kids. And then when I decided that I am not able to be with anyone else, and after 3 years, I realized, how false assumption was it, because it was taken in very concrete environment. And I asked myself the question: is it still valid assumption? So I'm using these models: self-observation, catching my thoughts, finding assumptions I used when I took the decision, making sure that I can rethink the assumption. I decided, no, it was a false assumption. It's time to change it. So it's okay to change your assumptions. That's important. And now I'm open to meeting new people. I don't like I'm old-fashioned man. I don't like apps like Tinder and so on. I believe I meet someone in real life, exposing myself to opportunities and the same groups. But it's the direct effect of me catching the assumption, changing the assumption, and observing. And through this, I met a person, and I'm able to test in a new relationship this attitude: no white lies. And that's so interesting, because with a new person, you want to be perceived as a interesting partner. You want to be interesting for the other part. And sometimes there is this shortcut. Okay, I can say this because that will sound better. And why I'm sharing this? Because what we talk about in context of work, big changes in life, it can be applied to any area of life. If you have any assumptions, if you need to do something, if you decide that you do or won't do something because of something, there is always a possibility to catch why you did it, what's your attitude, rethink, change the decision. Start it as a test, experiment, learn while doing. And I love that attitude. And that wasn't possible for Dominik 10 years ago, before he went for the first trainings running. That it was made possible through all the process that happened. I'm not sure if it was the answer we were looking for, but
I think, I was not really looking for a particular answer, and I think that's very beautiful and that's very strong. So thank you for sharing that very personal note. And as you say, I think what we learn for business, what we learn for our personal career developments, for our personal developments, all those structures, and it's very individualized structures, hopefully, can be applied to a lot of different ways and pillars or contexts in life. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. And from the bottom of my heart, I wish you all the best. And I'm sure we're gonna catch up, and you're gonna let me know how it goes if you feel like. And that was really strong. That was really nice. Thanks for sharing that, Dominik.
That's part of my life mission: to experiment, to test, but also share the results of my experiments. And if I have this my life mission and I read it every week, it's ingrained in my way of thinking, in my brain. That's why I'm doing this openly.
It's beautiful. Thank you very much, Dominik. There's 3 questions that I ask each and every one of my guests. But before we go there, I'm sure that our listeners would like to get to know more about you and yourself as a person. I will, of course, link all your social media in the podcast notes, but is there something that you would want to share with the audience in that regard?
Unfortunately, most of the content I create is still in Polish, but maybe it will change in the future. So my personal website. Uh, I ask you to include this in the notes because my surname is hard to pronounce or spell for no Polish speakers. It's Dominik Juszczyk .pl. There is a lot of SZs, CZs, and so on. So that's one place. I'm pretty active on Instagram, and I think that even if you don't speak Polish, I talk a lot about books, sharing books, ideas, different techniques. So you can check it there.
And there is the neat feature of translating Polish into English, because I must say that my Polish is not at the very best level yet. So what I do personally is I translate Dominik's content. I can highly recommend you do the same. Wonderful. Thank you, Dominik. The first question that I have for you is, what motivated you in the past week?
My value called courage. I have my values written down. I read them very often. And I spot that I'm not doing something because I'm not courage enough. And when I spot it, I said, I want to be courage. So I did it. And my values and being aware of my values motivated me to act.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that and sharing that process. The second question would be, who are your mentors and whom do you look up to, Dominik?
There are a few people. I have them written down because that's also very tactical for me. At any point in time, I have at least two people that together represent for me a place where I want to be. And I'm not sure if it's okay to share something, but I can show you something in the screen. I'm not sure if you want to include it.
Let's try. Let's do.
I'm using the Obsidian. And at the moment, I have 3 or 4, depending how you count them, people. I have no idea how to pronounce the name of that lady, but she's running. She's neuroscientist. She worked for Google, and now she's running a great community called NestLab. And she's really good in finding articles and describing how we learn, how we act based on neuroscience. So I'd love to be as good as her in sharing that kind of knowledge. Then I have a James Clear, of course, Atomic Habits, but he's really good in being a go-to guy in one topic. And I want to be a go-to guy in one of the topics I have in mind. And I'm learning from him how he's talking about this, how he's structuring his newsletter, how he's structuring his website, how he's presenting this on YouTube and so on. Then I have Paul Jervis, who written a book, Company of One. When he's challenging the only goal for the company being growth, he says that you can have a ceiling of income and then optimize how you earn that income. And that's me. I have a certain level of income I want to have. I'm already there. Now I'm optimizing how I'm getting there. So I'm learning from him. And then there is Scott Young, who is really good in explaining complex topics in very concrete processes in context of learning, building competences. And there is one more person. I'd love to learn more from her, Maria Popova. She's the author of the website that used to be called Brain Pickings. Now it's called The Marginalia. And she's amazing in combining books, art, poetry, music into one. I'm not sure how to call that form. Essay, blog post, whatever you call it. She's so good in putting her ideas through those authors, creators, in a way that it's easy to digest. And she's doing it so beautifully. She's a little bit too far from me, meaning that she's really, really good in it. So I need to learn. I want to learn from these people first. Then I'll be striving to learn from Maria Popova. So these are people that are my mentors. I'm learning from, and I'm using as my kind of measuring sticks, but also destination marks when I want to land in some time. And that's what works for me.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Dominik. And I think I've never gotten such a structured and well thought through answer for the mentor question. And I really encourage each and everybody to take a look at least the last 5 minutes of the YouTube version of this podcast, because it gives you an idea of how structured and well thought through Dominik really is. And yeah, I can learn from that. So thank you very much on the mentors and your approach, your explanation. That was really, really great. Thank you very much. The third and final question, Dominik, that I have for you is, imagine that you are traveling all by yourself in space, and you do so for quite some time, in fact, for a couple of months, maybe even years. And after that long period of time, you encounter a human-like species, but they can only process 3 truths or 3 facts about humanity before they decide whether or not they want to get to know us. What do you share with them?
It's a great question. I wonder if I should give the answers about good things or warn them about humanity. And I'd share the fact number 1, that we can adjust to almost any environment, and that's the one of the biggest advantages of humankind, that we can adjust, survive in so strange, different environments. That's the secret of our success, and that's one. I think that the second is that we don't always do, but we can create beautiful things when we work together. I mean, art, and that's amazing, because art is not useful. I'm putting this in quotation marks, as something that is needed to live, for life, but that's something that's so important and so beautiful. And anytime I'm listening to music and watching paintings, I'm thinking, okay, what made that person to do that, and how it's creating emotions in myself. So that's the second part, and the second fact. And the third fact, I'm not sure it's a fact, it's my belief, I would love to be true, that people are inherently good, and we are good, and we want to do good, and if we have right environment, we will be good for each other. And try to find those conditions that we can be good for each other.
Wonderful. I love it. And I certainly share this desire, belief in humanity as being something good. So thank you so much, Dominik, for all your wisdom, for all your expertise. And again, I'm very sure I would invite you again to the Just Another Mindset podcast. And yeah, with that, thank you so much and have a wonderful day, and talk soon.
Thank you very much. Have a great day. Bye.
If you enjoy this podcast and learn from it, please feel free to share this episode with a friend or two, and make sure to subscribe to the Just Another Mindset podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please use the next 10 seconds to give the Just Another Mindset podcast a rating, and know that you will help me to create more meaningful content like this, and also that it will help other people to find this content and get inspired as well. If there is any future topic or guest that you would like to hear more about on the Just Another Mindset podcast, please let me know by leaving a comment on YouTube or sending a mail directly to contact@ishmaelwondergarten.com. And if nobody told you lately, be reminded that you are worthy, you matter, and you can achieve anything.
Be yourself positive. Just another mindset.